In the year 2008, a deeply unsettling event took place at the University of Benin that would reignite a long-standing rivalry between two powerful student groups, the Black Axe and the Air Lords. The incident happened in a secluded location within the university known as Ekeosodi, a place known among insiders as a hotspot for secret gatherings and underground activities. On this particular day, the Black Axe group had arranged an important initiation ceremony meant to welcome new members into their fold. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until it all fell apart. According to widely circulated rumors on campus and beyond, someone had leaked information about the gathering to the authorities. The police, acting swiftly on the tip-off, raided the initiation ground without warning. Chaos erupted. Some of the Black Axe members were apprehended on the spot, while others attempted to flee. In their desperation to escape the crackdown, a few of them tried to swim across a nearby river. Tragically, some never made it to the other side. Their bodies were later found, lifeless, caught in the weeds and rocks downstream. News of the failed ceremony spread like wildfire across the university and quickly reached other campuses. Soon, it was alleged that a member of the Air Lords had been the one who informed the police, supposedly after some Black Axe members involved in the ceremony were accused of robbing residents in the surrounding community. Whether this claim was fact or fiction, it ignited a fresh wave of tension. The Black Axe group, still reeling from the losses they had suffered that day, believed it was an act of betrayal. Their anger wasn't just about the arrest, it was about the humiliation, the lives lost, and the deep disrespect they felt had been shown. The man believed to be behind the tip-off was a high-ranking member of the Air Lords. Once his involvement was suspected, the Black Axe declared him a marked man. But despite their efforts to locate him, he had vanished without a trace. No one seemed to know where he was. Some whispered that he had gone underground, others believed he had left the city entirely. Regardless, the damage was done. From that day forward, the animosity between the two groups intensified. What had once been a cold rivalry became a burning feud. And even though the incident occurred at the University of Benin, some of the Black Axe members present that day were not from the institution, they were external collaborators, students from Delta State University who had come specifically to witness or take part in the event. Among those external members was a young man known in certain circles as Brano. A known and trusted figure within the Black Axe group at Delta State University, Brano had narrowly escaped the police raid at Ekeosodi. Ever since that day, the memory of what happened had stayed with him, the confusion, the shouts, the sound of running feet, and the sight of his brother struggling in the river. He had made it out, but his heart remained heavy with anger and a desire for some form of justice, or revenge. Some weeks after the incident, back at Delta State University, life on campus had resumed its usual rhythm. But for Brano and others who had witnessed the events in Benin, nothing felt normal. There was a particular motor park near the school that most students used whenever they were traveling to or from Benin. It was a small, dusty lot with rusty minibuses, drivers shouting destinations, and hawkers weaving between the vehicles selling snacks and drinks. This park was the only reliable route to Benin at the time. On a hot afternoon, Brano sat across from the park on a low concrete ledge, surrounded by a few of his fellow Black Axe members. They were not doing much, just watching the buses come and go, talking in hushed tones, and keeping an eye on their surroundings. They had become more watchful since the incident. Nothing could be taken for granted anymore. Then something unexpected happened. A motorcycle, its engine coughing and wheezing, rolled into the park. Riding on the back was a face they all instantly recognized, the leader of the Air Lords, the very group alleged to have set everything in motion back in Benin. He jumped down from the bike casually, not a care in the world, and began walking towards one of the buses as if he hadn't a single worry. Brano sat upright, his muscles tensing. Time seemed to slow. The air grew still. Around him, the others exchanged glances, their expressions hardening. In that moment, the past and present collided. The face of the man in front of them was the same one burned into their memories, the one tied to the pain and loss of Ekeosodi. It was as if fate had dropped him right into their path. What happened next would mark the beginning of a new chapter in the already tense relationship between the two groups. As Brano and the other Black Axe members from Delta State University sat across from the motor park, their attention was suddenly drawn to a familiar figure stepping off a motorcycle. It was the leader of the Air Lord confraternity, the very group they believed had set in motion the events that led to the failed initiation at Eke-Osodi in the University of Benin. Though weeks had passed since that tragedy, the memory of it remained fresh and painful. Seeing him in that moment, walking casually as though nothing had ever happened, triggered a surge of emotion among them. For the Delta State Black Axe members, this was more than a chance encounter. It felt like fate had handed them an opportunity to respond to the past in their own way. Their anger, still simmering from the chaos in Benin, quickly turned into resolve. They believed this was a moment to balance the scales. The leader of the Air Lords hadn't done anything to provoke them directly at that moment, but the scars of Eke-Osodi needed little justification. In truth, the confrontation they were about to initiate was not rooted in anything that had just happened, it was about everything that had happened before. They approached him, pretending to be reacting to something minor, claiming he had been pointing at them. It was a flimsy excuse, one that wasn't based on truth, but for them, it didn't matter. The accusation was simply a tool to provoke a confrontation that had been waiting to happen. What they wanted was to assert dominance, to issue a form of payback, and to send a message. When he resisted their demands, the situation escalated. They forcefully took his phone, disregarding his refusal and leaving him embarrassed in public. Once the deed was done, they returned to their corner, believing they had sent a clear warning. But things moved quickly from there. About half an hour after the incident, Brano received a phone call from a senior Black Axe member at Delta State University. The leadership had already heard about what happened at the park, which made it clear how fast information was spreading among both groups. The caller was seeking clarity, wanting to know exactly what took place and who had taken the phone from the Air Lord leader. Brano didn't hesitate. He explained that the phone had been taken by one of their own, a member known among them as Hail Mary. What Brano didn't know yet was that, at the same time, the leader of the Air Lords had gone straight to his group to report what had happened to him. He described how he had been publicly confronted, accused without cause, and manhandled by members of the Black Axe group. His account stirred outrage among his fellow Air Lords. There was no delay. Their response was swift and brutal. Not long after the park incident, two members of the Black Axe who were relaxing at a student hangout known as the Monkey Joint were attacked. The place was usually known for its laid-back vibe. Students gathered there to eat, talk, and take breaks from campus life. But on this day, it became the stage for a calculated retaliation. The Air Lords struck without hesitation, targeting two individuals linked to their rivals. It was a message loud enough for all to hear. When word of the attack reached Brano, the reality of what had been set in motion hit hard. He immediately contacted Hail Mary, the same member who had taken the phone earlier, and informed him about the situation. Brano explained that their actions at the park had triggered a serious reaction, and two of their members had now paid the price. It became clear to both of them that this wasn't just a skirmish anymore. This was the beginning of something larger. Tensions that had been building since the failed initiation at Eke-Osodi had now exploded into open conflict. The time for warnings and silent resentment had passed. Brano and Hail Mary knew they needed to regroup, prepare, and brace themselves for what was now becoming an unavoidable clash between the two rival groups. After hearing what had happened earlier at the Monkey Joint, Brano became deeply worried. He couldn't sit still. Two of his fellow Black Axe members had already been taken down in retaliation for the incident at the motor park, and now he feared that the situation might escalate even further. But more than that, he was especially concerned about one of his close allies, a fellow member of the Black Axe who lived in the area known as Monkey Joint. Now, to anyone unfamiliar with the area, the name Monkey Joint might sound like a bar or entertainment spot, but it wasn't that. It was actually the name of a neighborhood, an open, partly bushy section near campus that got its nickname because, in earlier years, it was full of trees and wild monkeys. Before the university expanded and developers came in to clear the land, the area was filled with small farms, scattered hostels, and, famously, a restaurant run by a Calabar man. This man was known for preparing a local delicacy, monkey pepper soup, which became so popular that people began referring to the whole area as Monkey Joint. Now, with the growing tension between rival groups and violence already erupting, Brano feared that his comrade living in Monkey Joint might have gotten caught in the middle of it all. He tried calling him several times, but the calls didn't go through. The line kept saying unreachable. Brano's anxiety began to grow. He knew how dangerous the situation had become, but something inside him told him he had to go check things for himself. He decided to wait until it was dark, hoping that moving under the cover of night would keep him from drawing attention. Around 8 p.m., Brano made his way to Monkey Joint. As he approached the familiar surroundings, a wave of unease settled over him. From a distance, he noticed that something was wrong. The normally calm and casual environment looked completely different. The plastic chairs and large umbrellas that were usually set up around the open-air food spots were now scattered and overturned. A few items were lying on the ground, as if people had left in a hurry. And then Brano saw something that made his stomach turn, a police van parked nearby, with its doors open. He immediately ducked into a cassava farm just beside one of the hostels, crouching low behind the tall leaves to avoid being seen. From his hidden spot, Brano watched in silence as several uniformed officers moved around the area. They were carrying stretchers, each one with a still, lifeless body placed on top. The police were loading the bodies into the van with serious, measured movements. Brano squinted to get a better view, trying to recognize the faces of the fallen. He knew that 4 Black Axe members, including his friend, lived in that hostel. But from where he was sitting, he couldn't make out the features clearly. None of the bodies looked immediately familiar, but his heart raced anyway. He remained perfectly still, hidden in the thick cassava plants, watching and listening. After the bodies were taken away, a wave of sadness passed through the area. Several students began to gather around the hostel. Some were crying. Others stood in groups, whispering with shocked expressions. Brano realized that something truly serious had taken place, and he couldn't stay hidden forever. Carefully, he stepped out from the farm and walked towards the hostel, trying to act calm. As soon as some of the students caught sight of him, they froze. A few of them pointed in his direction. Others turned and ran. It was clear that at least some people recognized him, and more importantly, they knew who he was affiliated with. In that tense moment, the label of cultist was enough to make everyone scatter. Brano managed to approach one young woman who hadn't run off like the others. She looked scared, but when he asked her what had happened, she decided to speak. She explained that earlier that night, a group of armed individuals had entered their hostel. The intruders didn't say much, they simply came in, made their way straight to specific rooms, and targeted 2 known students. According to the girl, the 2 victims were Andrew and Frank. When Brano heard those names, he froze. Andrew was the very person he had been trying to reach on the phone earlier. The same friend whose line wouldn't connect. The news hit him hard. His chest tightened. For a moment, he just stood there, too stunned to speak. Then he slowly brought out his phone and called his leader within the Black Axe. The leader confirmed what the girl had said, Andrew and Frank had been killed. Just as Brano ended the call, he looked up and noticed several figures walking toward him from the far end of the road. He immediately recognized the body language, the dress, and the direction they were coming from. They were members of the rival group, the Airlords, and they were not approaching him by accident. Without wasting a second, Brano turned and sprinted back into the cassava farm. He knew the area well enough to move quickly through the thick vegetation. The Airlords gave chase, but the darkness, coupled with his knowledge of the terrain, gave Brano an advantage. He moved quietly through the back route, navigating between narrow paths and slipping behind trees until he was certain he had shaken them off. That night, Brano didn't return to his residence. He knew that the conflict had now fully exploded. What started as a confrontation over a phone had turned into a series of deadly encounters. For him, the war had become personal. And the path ahead was filled with uncertainty. The sun rose slowly over the quiet town of Abroka, but the calm of the morning was sharply at odds with the growing storm that had been gathering beneath the surface. The day before had seen violence that shook the university community to its core. Brano, a senior member of the Black Axe group in Delta State University, knew that what had begun as a confrontation over a phone had now spiraled into a full-blown conflict. Friends had been lost, enemies had drawn closer, and the air around the campus was thick with tension. That morning, Brano took action. He began making calls, many of them. One by one, he reached out to fellow members of the Black Axe across town and beyond. His message was direct and urgent. He told them plainly that the situation had reached a critical point, and anyone who wasn't mentally and physically ready to defend the group should leave town immediately. There was no room left for fear or indecision. The conflict with the Air Lords had now officially escalated into something far bigger. For the first time since the current leadership of the Black Axe emerged in Delta State University, they were entering a real war. Word spread quickly, and as expected, those who were not prepared for what was coming began to make themselves scarce. Brano, however, did not wait for reinforcements from within the school alone. He made contact with external support, trusted allies from another region known as the Odomawa High Temple. These were experienced members who had earned reputations for their ability to act with precision and speed. Within days, a special hit squad arrived in Abroka to strengthen Brano's team. With their arrival, the tone of the conflict shifted. The Black Axe now had external backing and renewed confidence. Not long after, Brano and the others set their sights on a specific member of the Air Lords. This individual had been active in the recent clashes and was believed to be involved in planning attacks against the Black Axe members. The group moved swiftly, but the Air Lord got wind of their approach and escaped, fleeing the town for a quieter place called Ogwashuku, hoping to disappear there and stay under the radar. Unfortunately for him, the Black Axe squad was determined and resourceful. They tracked him all the way to the quiet community where he had taken refuge. Despite the risk of operating outside their usual base, they pursued him with persistence and found him. The man had sought safety in his family's home, thinking perhaps that no one would dare to make a move in front of his loved ones. But the Black Axe members saw no boundary lines in this battle. They confronted him in front of his own parents, ending his escape in the most public and emotional way possible. The message was loud and clear: there was no place to hide. Weeks passed, and the cycle of tension continued. While Brano remained cautious, he tried to maintain his routines without drawing unnecessary attention to himself. But one afternoon, he received a phone call that made his instincts flare. The caller was a young woman he didn't know. Her voice was soft and pleasant, and she claimed to miss him. She said she wanted to meet up, sounding flirtatious and familiar, as though they had once shared something personal. But Brano couldn't remember ever speaking to her before. Something about the call didn't sit right with him. In this climate of betrayal and conflict, nothing was ever what it seemed. He knew the streets were no longer safe, and he suspected that the girl on the phone might not be calling on her own. Perhaps she had been sent by someone else. Perhaps this was a trap. It had all the signs of a setup, an attempt to lure him out into the open where his rivals could be waiting. Brano politely ended the call and made no move to meet the girl. The very next day, he received disturbing news. That night, while he was out, a group of men had come to his house looking for him. According to neighbors, they were not there for friendly reasons. No one knew exactly who they were, but Brano didn't need confirmation, he already had a strong suspicion. His decision to avoid the unknown caller might have saved his life. Now he understood that the situation had taken an even darker turn. He wasn't just a participant in the conflict anymore, he was a target. He realized he was being monitored, possibly followed, and that his rivals were determined to find him. The walls were closing in, and staying in town was no longer an option. After taking time to reflect on everything that had happened, from the failed initiation at Ekeosodi, to the fights, the retaliation, and now the manhunt, Brano knew it was time to disappear. He packed what little he could, left no message, and slipped quietly out of Abroka. It was not an easy decision, but it was necessary for his survival. Brano understood that staying would only mean walking into danger, and the cost of pride or revenge was now far too high. The lives already lost in the conflict weighed heavily on him. The cycle of violence had consumed many, and unless something changed, more would follow. And so, Brano left Abroka for good, leaving behind a chapter marked by chaos, choices, and consequences. The events that unfolded would remain in the memory of students, residents, and anyone who witnessed the storm. Please say no to cultism. There is no glory in violence, only pain, regret, and destruction.